Antithesis.
Antithesis is a weekly radio soiree of stimulating commentary and entertaining conversation discussing issues of importance in our daily lives.
Antithesis airs Sunday afternoon at 5:30.
I'm Richard Curtis.
I'm Leo Griep-Ruiz.
The opinions expressed on Antithesis are the opinions of the person speaking them,
and do not necessarily represent the views of the board, staff, or management of KGNU or of us here at Antithesis.
because I might not agree with him.
And I might not agree with him.
The future of religion. Mircea Eliade, who was perhaps the most important theorist of the history of religion in the 20th century, has described human beings as essentially religious. Eliade was a believer, but what if there really is no God? The non-existence of God does not answer the great questions in the history of religion, but asks more. If there is no God, or gods, why do humans behave in ways that many people describe as essentially religious? If we take Friedrich Engels at his word, and he was not a believer, the fundamental nature of reality is material and dialectical. If reality is the material world, and it moves dialectically, that is in very complicated ways, perhaps what we have previously understood as religious behavior is simply the behavior of humans trying to cope with a mysterious world. We may speculate that our world is mysterious, not because of the elusiveness of a god or gods, but because of the complexity of its dialectical motion. Religion has always expressed our sense of awe in the face of mystery and beauty. From the position of this new evaluation of religion without God or gods, there is a great deal to be learned from religious behavior, theology, and the ritual practices of human beings around the world. From the dialectical materialist point of view, there are in fact three levels of religious experience which are necessary to all societies. These are the social, the existential, and the aesthetic. We observe that our biology delimits certain possibilities and imposes certain necessities. Among these is the fact of our being social creatures, animals that live together and must of necessity cooperate to some significant degree. Then there is the complexity introduced by thought, which results in particular in the need for collective consensus about our societies and selves. We need to know how we fit together and what we are to make of our lives. This is the existential. We also find and must incorporate the fact that being human ultimately involves an aesthetic sensibility, which includes the capacity for wonder and even awe. This aesthetic level is the one we often think about first in describing religion, the poetic side of being human. Religion, even understood without idealism, without God or God talk, must still take into account these three very different but very integrated levels in which being human expresses itself. Religion, most significantly though, addresses the question of how human beings fit in the world and fit together. Engels taught that this level of reality too is determined by the material world, and it moves dialectically. The sociologist Peter Berger has argued that religion forms the basis for social constructions of reality, even though these constructions may have been attributed to a god or gods. Societies are the creations of human beings. These creations are complicated and have relied upon religious understandings of reality, as Eliade described, for their justifications. Berger's analysis implies that even after humans have progressed to the point of recognizing these social constructions as being our own profane creations, the complexity remains, and the necessity for intentionally creating meaning in society remains. In a fully democratic society, the decisions regarding the ways in which society should be constructed fall to everyone, rather than remaining the domain of a ruling class. Our future socialist society will construct social definitions of reality more freely than before, but these constructions will inevitably draw upon the religious language and forms of the past, even though the content will have been divorced from notions of the sacred or divine. In conclusion, it is important to acknowledge that Marxism, especially since the Soviet experiment, has been seen as cold and lifeless, science without enough poetry. Marxists themselves may resist this formulation because they have an experience of the human or poetic side of dialectics. However, the demands of revolutionary struggle, most especially including the struggle against religious ways of subverting class consciousness, fighting the narcotic effect of idealist religion, has forced an emphasis on the scientific side of scientific socialism. However, socialism is about the free expression of human beings and therefore will inevitably recapture its poetic side. It's hoped that the present discussion will contribute to an early rediscovery of this fuzzy and human side of dialectical materialism and to its fuller articulation. As Marx put it in the critique of Hegel's philosophy of right, religion is an expression of humanity's imperfect self-awareness, not human as abstract individual, but as social being, collective being. Thus far, religion is a distortion of human existence because society has been distorted.
Hallelujah. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Talk to me when I'm talking to you. Now, y'all know out there that you're missing something in your lives, and I know that if you get up a little bit closer to the radio, we can give you back that little tiny bit of something that you've been missing. So just put your hands out there now and join yourselves with us, because we're sending the vibrations to you down through the microphone, through the wires, and across the antennas, through the very ether, right there into your home and your heart. Hallelujah.
That's good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So,
that's like one of my heavy pieces.
Well, I thought, that a warm, fuzzy socialism is certainly much more attractive than a kinder, gentler presidency. So,
bound to be.
Hey, what if it works?
What?
Well, let's just get away from the concept. Let's try this. What if we move away from this concept of religion?
Religion.
Okay, which I believe has a part of it there has to do with legatus, legature, something like that, which I believe has to do with binding together. And this is a matter around which people are bound together if you break down the Latin. That's what happened when they taught this little Cholito man to like get into Latin and all that kind of stuff. I look at the words and I can break them down, so I see that in there, right? So it's the matter around which people are united. What if we look at it a little bit further? What if we look at it a little bit further? What if it worked?
It does. I mean, it does. People have been bound together.
I mean, no, beyond the binding together. What if actually reaching out there, putting your hands on the radio, really did bring the power of peace into your heart?
Or it will if their hands are wet.
That's assuming.
We actually don't advise that.
Yeah, that's assuming.
Don't do that
see,
at home.
That's assuming that you're grounded. You see, but if you're already grounded, then you won't need to reach out because you know that you have already been touched. So, what I'm talking about is
by the spirit of radio.
By the spirit of the good stuff, by the spirit of what makes you happy. By the spirit of what makes you Jones just pack up his bags and go away. By the spirit of that which takes the monkey off your back, flings it around your head, and throws it into the oceans of oblivion, brother. And sister. I know you.
And sister.
So, no, I know what their act is, but no, let's break it down. What if it worked?
What if
if instead, no. Well, yeah. What if it worked?
Tell me?
What if it worked? What if beyond the idea of identifying with like being a Presbyterian, Methodist, Lutheran, Baptist, Southern Baptist, Church of God in Christ, Assembly of God, if instead of picking a flavor and deciding which one they belong to and then going into all these arguments about saying what's right, I'm right, you're right, you're wrong, no, we got the true religion, no, you don't, boom, boom, bang, bang, and like, Bosnia and Herzegovina all over again, if instead of doing that, what if people got together and performed something, did a ceremony of some sort or some sort of practice which would be deemed a spiritual practice, might even, because religion is weird, but if people got down with some kind of ceremony and did something and made something else happen, would you then consider, what would that do to your general thesis?
Well, that would be different.
Okay, I just wanted to establish that. All right. Well, in terms of what you're saying here, then, I think that the question, first of all, of like, what if there's no God? Well, so what? I don't get it.
That's what I'm asking.
I don't know.
What if there is no God?
No, so what?
No, it's. I think.
What difference would that make? What difference would that make at all? It would make absolutely no difference in my life, because I know what I'm doing is not bound by no kind of precepts coming from on high. It's just what I got to do, so that when it's all over, I'll say that it made sense.
You're a very postmodern Chicano guy.
I don't know about I'm so far postmodern, Jack, that I'm living in the Stone Age, just one generation away from when my people were created of the white and yellow corn. Now that you ask.
Now that I ask.
Yeah.
Which is a choice.
I think this existentialist dilemma is just a load of.
No. It's not an existential dilemma.
Well, the question of what if.
It's a sociological dilemma.
What if there is no God? The question of what if there is no God is really the essence of the existentialist dilemma, because the essence of the existentialist dilemma is, oh my God, what am I going to do? What's the meaning of life? Come on, what's his meaning of life?
That's the point.
Just like too busy.
There is no meaning of life.
Who cares?
Other than what we choose to define as the meaning of life.
Provided that, what if there is no God? What if there is?
Well, no, but the point is that you are a living example of this, because you choose a definition that defines meaning in your existence. That has to do with white and yellow corn.
Whatever we're going to say, I'm not going to drag that particular one there into the dirt. I'm just going to say, though the dirt and some water on it is really cool. It makes mud, which is what Sean Slater accused me of being, a mud man. I go, cool, baby. The water of life and the stuff of my Mother Earth. I'll be a mud man any day, because I am full-time, and yeah. But what if there is no God? Just doesn't matter.
No,
either you do the right stuff because you're doing the right stuff, or else, come on, if you're some blackmailed bogus cat out there running around behind, some kind of, oh my God, what have I done? I go to the wrong place. I want to go to the right place. I'm going to do the right thing. Well, I don't care. Get out of my way. We're busy.
Well, wait, is that your way of confessing that you really don't believe that your people were created of white and yellow corn?
Absolutely.
But simply that they find that meaningful.
I think that the whole question is just, I don't care. You could accuse me of avoidance all you want, or of denial all you want. You're getting at that, because the next step is that I'm involved in the I'm involved in the psychological phenomenon of denial, in which I will not even consider the question because I'm busy. Now, the fact that I'm too busy to even bother considering the question, which is just a slight variation on how many angels dance on the head of the pin, I'm just going for broke.
Which question? Your God question.
Yeah, the one of is there a God? I just think that's like come on, that's such a huge.
No, I didn't ask the question. I said.
What's that noise?
Let's assume.
That's a tape recorder.
It's background noise.
Okay, we're just letting you know.
A little extra background noise.
Yeah, this is radio.
I'm not sure that's actually showing
verite.
up for the listeners out there.
Well, if I can hear it, the microphone can hear it. It's a sensitive microphone.
Okay, it had to be done.
Can God hear the microphone? Can God hear the machine moving?
I don't think that really has anything
I think
to do with my point,
there's certainly a narcotic effect in this thing called religion, if we break it down into its Latin roots there, of that matter around which people are bound together. But as you admitted earlier, if there were people who had some sort of practices which were in some way genuinely efficacious, which may be by some who lack a better word called religion, well, that sort of falls outside of the equation and certainly would not be part of that opiate stuff that you're talking about, which certainly is true when you get into people dividing themselves in their community around a question of religion. And you know who's coming together around the question of religion? Right now, there is amazing coming together in the South. There's a new generation of fundamentalist preachers, the new happy generation of evangelical preachers, and black churches and white churches, which were divided going back into the at least the late period of slavery, and undoubtedly into earlier periods as well. For example, the Southern Baptist Church has just come together.
Yes.
And
the fundamentalist churches are a menace to society, though.
And they're coming together for the reason that they have got such issues as homophobia and ruling over what a woman may do with her body.
So they've conveniently found a way of being backward together.
Yes, there is a fascinating coalition being formed between communities of color in general in evangelical fundamentalist churches, because now they're using the happier method. They're coming together and saying, now we're all children of the good Lord, and if you come and you bring your family and you stand there side to side with your sisters and brothers all together, washed in the blood of the Lamb, and accept...
Hey, you got to stop that.
Oh, okay.
Actually, my point is that from my point of view, religious practices are inherently efficacious. I mean, in order to survive
in a particular way, in the same way that human sacrifice
was
efficacious in binding people into an empire in Mexico, much against certain other what we'll call factions and tendencies within those societies.
So
certainly it works, man. It works good.
It's important to understand what it's really doing, and some of those things are necessary, inherently human things, and then others are more sinister. Like
the idea
of
a Navajo, a Diné, traditional Diné, and a Cherokee and a Choctaw and an Anishinaabe and an Inuit and a Mapuche and a Guarani and a Kanakamaoli from Hawaii and other places from around the world, and Yoruba people from Ghana and all of that kind of stuff. I think they're from Ghana. Anyhow, the idea of all of them getting together to argue over who's got the one true religion is just absolutely a hysterical absurdity.
Why?
Because we all pretty much figure that everybody else has got a piece of what makes up that one big, huge ceremony, which any of us have got little brains are just too puny to figure out how to run. So we got to have all these different
I don't
pieces.
think that's true. I don't think that's actually true. I think it's because the cultures you're talking about all come out of a current experience of subjugation. Because certainly the conversation that you're taking us into would not have been true, 400 years ago, because the Aztecs would have been pretty serious about arguing that they had the one true religion, and they were pretty much going to kill anyone else.
I tell you what, I will research the extent to which I can find in the historical record of that being the case, because all of the research I've done into such things as Aztec warfare, along with political, social life, and various other aspects of the society, I'm talking about all of the authors. I could, everybody from Bartolomé de las Casas on through Alarcón, as well as Sahagún, and more modern contemporary writers like Michael Coe, and a whole bunch of others. And I can't remember the author of the book that I'm currently reading.
Just tell me what it is you want to say.
Called Aztec Warfare.
Yeah.
The reason that the Aztec warfare had to do with creating what amount to buffer zones around their ever-growing economic interests, and that they did not force other people to adhere. They had them come and stand in presence at their ceremonies, and frequently used mandatory attendance of notables from other regions at the ceremonies as a way of controlling them and, in a sense, holding them hostage.
Right.
But and they did demand economic tribute to support
the empire,
the imperial center. But they did not demand that all of the other people adhere to their spiritual practices, though they did usually have those newly subjugated or newly involved people in the empire create temples with their own local deities in order to show that the one place that all of the deities wound up at was their ceremonial center.
Right.
And then also they tended to not use permanent occupying armies.
Is this your way of telling me that they didn't claim that their religion was the one true religion?
They did not claim that their religion was the one true religion in the sense of forcing other people to adhere to it. And I don't know the extent...
Well, that may be true, but that's not important.
Because there also we have to understand that there was continues to be a general Mesoamerican cosmological complex,
What does that mean? General Mesoamerican cosmological complex?
there's, throughout the general Mesoamerican region, there is a very basic philosophical beliefs that are much like the beliefs in, for example, we could say China and Central Southern Asia, where there's a general complex of a single totality which then divides into complementary opposites and is, we could say, a philosophical schematic for dialectical process.
Ooh, boy.
In that at each...
wait, I mean, I understand, nonetheless, but the point is about the Aztecs, because there is actually, I think I have a fairly concrete argument about that.
I'm waiting.
I mean, the Aztec belief was that if they didn't conduct the blood sacrifice, that the sun would not continue to move in the way that it moved, which was necessary to the survival of people on Earth. Therefore, they conducted blood sacrifices at the temple in Tenochtitlan. Well, that in and of itself is a claim to authenticity. I mean, they're certainly claiming that they're right, and anyone who doesn't believe that what they're saying is obviously wrong, because we're going to do the blood sacrifice, aren't we?
They thought that that's what they should do, but they didn't impose that on others. But now we're also getting into something that is very a shallow level, because there's a deeper belief and a deeper tension inside of that society.
Well, all right, but what I want to talk about is the more interesting point that you brought up with something that
more
that
interesting
these
to you.
Tribal, well, you know, I'm the one who gets to be in charge of this show. We take turns, don't we?
You see, that's what I said. Go ahead.
It's my turn. It's my turn. Turn. There's a sword here. Anyway, my 30 minutes
another
of running the show.
Another lame duck producer on his way out. Go ahead.
No, your point about all of these various tribal peoples around the Americas sharing something in common that would not, that arguing amongst themselves over who had the true religion is anathema. They just simply wouldn't.
I don't know about anathema. We're dealing with a certain rather biblical context.
Has no meaning. They wouldn't do it. That's what you said.
Wouldn't it just be ridiculous?
Would be ridiculous. Okay.
Like trying to argue over whether McDonald's or Wendy's or Arby's has better food when it doesn't even fall in the category of food to begin with.
That's because all of these peoples have constructed meaningful religious systems in an experience of oppression. Those human expressions, those religious creations of theirs, these social and cultural creations that come from these various tribal peoples, are all particularly valuable because they're very human creations. They're creations that bind these people together in a way that creates meaning for them, and in particular, a meaning that perpetuates a struggle for human dignity.
That doesn't necessarily exclude other things. I think that by saying that, you're going to now go off and exclude certain aspects in terms of other issues, but I already got you caught to the fact that if there is some degree of efficaciousness in these practices beyond the mere social glue, like if they actually did do what they say they're supposed to do, like if they actually did heal certain sorts of illnesses or actually well, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to go down that road because some of that is mixing the
stands in the presence of
religion
like a hail of gunfire
and medicine,
and
because there's no reason to call tribal medicine religious.
Ah, but you see, it's right
medicine.
There. That right there shows one of the fact that a certain what I'll call Eurogenic focus tends to fail, is because it would make that distinction between what is called medicine and what is called religion, because in terms of most of these things that you are calling tribal religious practices, in fact what they are methods for guaranteeing health and balance, rather than merely getting down on your knees once a week to make a donation because somebody makes you feel good when you wish for something.
And that actually is my point, which is that human society, taken as a global totality, will recapture that. We all will return to that place where we understand that life is a matter of our connections with one another and a connection with the world, and that what we have previously called religion, which does that in a way that takes its justifications from God, or in the Aztec example, takes its justification from the necessity of sacrificing people in order to appease a god that keeps the sun moving, that will fade away, and it will be done more intentionally, without the threats. It's not that you have to do it; it's that we do this because it's a good idea, and that we will recapture that. I mean, I think. And I mean, it's not true in the circles that you hang out with, but I think it's true in the circles that I hang out with, that people think about socialist revolution and what that means, that they think about it in an atheist context, which is true. I mean, I do think that's the future.
That you have the true religion.
People will give up this notion of other and gods and stuff.
I just want to make sure that we know who here actually has a grasp on the one true religion.
and we'll leave that argument for another time.
No, you already said you do, because
I understand we disagree.
I mean, what if there is?
And it's okay, we can disagree. Well, because you think you do too. But
no, I don't have my hand, and I just got hold of a little teeny tiny, little itty bitty edge of the hem of a big old chunk of stuff that's beyond my ability to pick up. That's kind of like me being an ant trying to pick up a rubber tree plant. High hopes don't matter. It ain't going no place. You got to take into consideration also, I think, when you're making up this thing, when you're saying the stuff about the Aztecs and stuff, that there was this whole other tendency of people who had been taken out of power. There's an old story that the historical Quetzalcoatl was dethroned because he was opposed to human sacrifice, and that these other priests who didn't want to have human sacrifice got him drunk, is how the story goes, because he had never had this particular stuff to drink. And then he behaved in such a way, I won't go into the details here, that he basically shamed himself and had to leave. And that as he left and went off into the east, there are parts of Mexico where if you do go off into the east, you wind up in the Yucatan. You wind up on land. You don't just go all the way until you land, in
right.
Lisbon or Barcelona or a place, like that. So, and it's around that time that the Maya developed, began into their society, entered the concept of Kukulkan, which also translates as feathered serpent, as does Quetzalcoatl. And there is further studies done by David Carrasco, who I believe was with CU Boulder. I think he's still there.
That's where I learned about the Aztecs.
He was saying
he's at Princeton now.
Okay, he was saying some very interesting stuff about how the Moctezuma may well have realized that with the return of this one called Quetzalcoatl, that they were going to pay for an illegitimate occupation of the throne and using trickery in order to use this very thick glue of human sacrifice in order to hold together a society, and that the cat knew he was on his way out. So there's really more to it.
That's because the empire had been spread to the breaking point.
And I think that also raising the issue was saying that the reason that they practiced human sacrifice was specifically in order to feed the sun so that it would keep moving. That might be somewhat similar or tantamount to saying that the reason that the Civil War was fought was in order to free the slaves. We've already discussed how there was much more at stake. Yeah,
that's why they said they were doing it.
That was at least the part that we know they have said, because that is precisely the part
they wrote down.
That the historians with a certain kind of bias have colluded with.
Well, I mean, it's all taken from written records from the Aztecs.
What, half dozen or dozen written records?
It's written in a hieroglyph, so it's difficult to interpret literally. I mean, that's true.
Well, in a glyphic format somewhat different from the hieroglyphs, because these were basically puns, images that gave out sound. Different from a hieroglyph. That's
okay, sorry. But in a graphical form. I mean, which also, anyway.
But the question you raised is, what if there's no God?
And the answer is, religion is still necessary and meaningful. And that's not the normal answer to that question.
I think that religion, in the sense of what you were talking about, which is sort of this, country club membership kind of deal where people get to believe and are divided in order to be conquered, which is how I define religion, which is very, very, very... Well, isn't that what Marx was talking about in terms of the opiate of the masses? That kind of thing where it keeps people from thinking about what's real?
Well, yeah.
See, so I would even use the term religion. I would have to find some other kind of term, because religion has come to mean binding people around a certain belief system in a way that excludes everyone else. And that's certainly
and that's
not
what I'm saying,
the nature of the spiritual practices of many, many, many traditional indigenous peoples with whom I am familiar and with whom I interact.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks
the
for
last
listening.
time we agreed, we gave out the wrong phone number, so don't let that happen to you this time. The comment line is not what we said it was before. The comment line actually is 447-9911.
You've been listening to Hemispheres, a weekly feature.
No, you haven't.
What am I? Oh,
this is not Hemispheres.
How did I do
Hemispheres
that?
is a dignified, responsible show.
Responsible.
It's not like this. Do you know who we are? We are the pinky and brain of the left. That's what this is. And he's the tall one. He's the tall one.
Thanks for listening. 5:30 to 6
tall, skinny
every
one.
Sunday on
and
KGNU.
I'm the short, round one.
Boulder.
And we'll be back next week to try to take over the world.
And you can hear Antithesis Sunday afternoons from 5:30 to 6 here on KGNU Boulder, 88.5 FM with translator K260A.